As we work on our primary research, our second draft will be a multimodal composition in which we add modes to our linguistic text. Multimodal is a port menu combining multiple and modes. As the essay as we know it, the black ink on white paper, goes away, we are reading information in the 21st century on screens. And this allows us to more easily include and incorporate images, photos, videos, etc. So in this 21st century electric environment with multimodal compositions, we now are asked to make many more decisions about multiplying the modes through which we can appeal to ethos, pathos, and logos and become ever more persuasive to our audience. Take a look at this inherent visual argument. What is the argument being made? And what effect does the visual nature of the argument have upon you, the viewer? So in multimodal composition, we consider 5 modes of communication. The first you're very familiar with, linguistic, visual, aural, as in what we hear, gestural, as the gestures people make, and spatial, in which we're talking about how things are placed on a page. Again, the linguistic mode is the mode that you are most familiar with as a student writer. You might have agonized over word choices and how to organize and develop your structure of information for people, how to deliver it to your audience. But as a consumer of 21st century composition, you're also very familiar with the visual mode as we think about things like color and layout, the style of a text, the size of font, the perspective of the image on the page. The aural mode is one that we're all familiar with as consumers of music and videos and movies. So if you're watching something, what impact does the music have? Or what about sound effects? Or the idea of ambient noise? And we often forget how effective silence can be. We want to think about tone and the volume, the emphasis that we can make, and also the accents that we hear. As we begin to incorporate other modes beyond the linguistic, spatiality becomes important. Spatiality means where we place objects on a page. So arrangement, organization, the space between objects becomes important as we think about where the eye is drawn and what impact this has on our argumentative persuasion. Gestural mode, this is the gestures that someone makes as they convey information. So you might think about your oral communication class, or you might think about watching a TED Talk video, for example. What are the facial expressions and what information are they communicating? What about hand gestures or body language? Or if there's more than one person, what about the interactions between people? Again, where does this draw the attention and what impact does it have on the argument itself? So let's consider some of these modes as we examine this infographic argument about student loan debt. Now the infographic is pulling upon the linguistic, the visual, and the spatial modes particularly. As you examine this infographic, I hope that you will note it's actually divided into quadrants. So if we drew a line down the center of the page, we would note that there are actually two different types of debt being referenced. On the left-hand side is a discussion of student loan debt, and on the right-hand side is a discussion of credit card debt. There's also a horizontal horizon line where we see that split in color, and we can see that this image is actually chained to two rather large balls, and this seems to be a horizon line where these debts might sink this graduate or the graduate might be drowning. So let's think about the images in the infographic. Note the graduate is kind of genderless and faceless. This is so that we can all imagine ourselves in that place. And note that the ball and chain of credit card debt is significantly smaller than the ball and chain of student loan debt. So most graduates from college will have less credit card debt than they will have student loan debt. So the visuals have a huge impact. Note the color choices here, as these are dark colors on the background, kind of muddy looking, as this is not a very happy topic. And then the very bright text font, so that our attention is drawn significantly to these numbers: 67%, 84%. 23,000 is the average student loan debt. 3,000 is the average credit card debt that most students will graduate with. And so there's some very good choices being made here that have an impact on the persuasiveness of this argument. As you consider your multimodal draft, you want to think about the impact of your argument and the modes. As you think about your argument, you want to determine which of the modes are going to afford you the more persuasive impact. So if you have an argument that is largely logos based, you may want to choose to do an infographic. If you have an argument that is essentially pathos oriented, you may want to do a video. Be careful of choosing the Powtoon and the Pixton for very serious topics, as the cartoon nature of these may seem to belittle that topic. So again, think about the persuasive factor or impact of these modes as you make your decision for this essay.